Seda,
Yes.
I'm not going to be able to record this meeting and download it because I'm listening on my phone and taking my child to the doctor.
No problem.
Okay. Sorry about that.
The meeting is open.
So there's one more person in the waiting. No, there's a couple. I'm trying, for some reason, someone wasn't able to get in, even though I kept pressing admit.
Done.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm Camille Casaretti, the president of CEC 15, and I am thrilled to be with you today for the start of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Monday afternoon workshop. I want to thank you for taking the time to be on this call and to thank our CEC council members as well as District 15 Superintendent Anita Scott for supporting the development of these sessions and for budgeting funds for the very important work we're doing to desegregate our schools. This DEI series is an opportunity for school community members and incoming families to learn about efforts surrounding advancements of diversity, equity, and inclusion in District 15 and throughout the city. Updates on the District 15 Diversity Plan and the Sub-District 3 rezoning will be referenced throughout these sessions, and I would encourage you to share the information you receive here today and ask your friends and school community members to participate in these ongoing Monday afternoon sessions. Each of our district schools has a diversity and equity committee of some sort. Please let them know that they're welcome to not only attend these meetings, but to also share their stories with us at any time. We plan to host meetings every Monday afternoon from 1 to 2 p.m. for the next 8 weeks, ending on November 16th. No sessions will be held on Yom Kippur or Columbus Day. Saida, would you mind sharing the session topics, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So today's session will offer a look into advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion in our schools. Our guest speakers will give us a high-level overview of work that's being done at the Department of Education across New York City schools on a citywide level, with support from our district office on a district-wide level, and with work being done on a local level in our elementary schools. Next week, our session will focus on early childhood, social emotional learning, and inclusive classrooms. And the week after, we'll review the formative years, the influence of parents, teachers, and first friendships. This is a very important topic. The social and societal lessons that children learn at an early age will stay with them for a long time. This will shape the way they think about themselves and how they see the world. In session 4, we'll talk about redirection and our ability to change patterns. Our children have been out of school for months now. Many of them have lost contact with their friends and have fallen into very bad habits. Children are on screen more than ever before. We'll discuss strategies to reconnect and redirect with family and friends. Finding new and healthier habits will not only benefit your family, it will empower you to take control of your family's future. We have a great ability to change our physical patterns and our thought patterns. Part of that is visualizing the change. What kind of world do you want your children to live in? Our ability and willingness to change patterns can make a lasting impact on equity for all of our students. We'll be discussing cultural diversity and how our differences bring us closer together. Our schools will be implementing a culturally sustaining responsive curriculum this year, thanks to the leadership of Chancellor Carranza. This incredibly important work will allow teachers and students to really get to know each other in ways that didn't exist previously. Learning from each other, hearing each other's stories will shape our young people and give them the foundation that they need to succeed as citizens of the world. Understanding cultures will help us overcome and prevent racial and ethnic divisions. Did you know that learning about cultural differences can actually bring people closer? Ask yourself, what kind of cultural community do you want for yourself and your child? We'll spend a session discussing appropriate settings and cooperative learning. We'll review special education terms from the law and how they're being used more widely in conversations about equity. What is an appropriate setting versus the least restrictive environment? Are our students with IEPs given the same opportunities as our general education students? Cooperative and collaborative learning is gaining popularity for a number of reasons. It raises student achievement, promotes a positive self-image, and raises regard for others. Struggling students show great gains in this teaching model, while the majority of students perform just as well, if not better. When students notice the value of their input and effort in a group setting, they gain more control and a belief in their own ability. Social and work skills are embedded in this style of learning. It's a win-win for everyone. In our last two sessions, we will address moral imperatives, orientations towards helping others, and developing concepts of social equity. When children are young, they show behaviors that resemble the morally relevant behaviors of older children and adults. They start to judge acts as morally right or wrong later in childhood. We will discuss the development of two phenomena central to morality: orientations towards helping others and developing concepts of social equality. We will discuss our roles as adults in guiding our children towards a more equitable society. Who will be the visionaries, the healers, the disruptors, or the builders of social change? Here you'll learn how to be a threat to inequity. We must educate children for civic participation at every level, so that they and we come to see more committed, generous, and heroic actions as part of everyday life, not just as a reaction to crisis. In our last session, we'll review research on school choice lotteries and their impact on education. There are various models in these lotteries. Learn about the model that District 15 used in our middle school diversity plan and how community engagement and admissions policy that mimics our district average is making a difference in the future education of our students. There'll be a lot of information coming out of these sessions. You may have questions. Don't be afraid to ask. You can use the chat feature if you want to, or you can write to us anytime at bec15@schools.nyc.gov. This pandemic has caused serious harm to many of our school communities. Administrators have lost life partners, teachers have lost loved ones, and children have lost parents and grandparents. Some of us are working from home, while others are out of work. Our most essential workers continue to be in dangerous, life-threatening situations. Space constraints and complications with technology, whether it be through devices that we may or may not have, or through lack of internet connections, are ongoing. Social inequities have been brought to the surface that cannot be ignored. These Monday afternoon sessions are a place where you can learn about how to make impactful changes in your personal life, in your family, and in your school community. The demands that are being placed on us are challenging. You have the strength to be a leader in this work. Sometimes it seems hard to believe that things will ever return to normal, but in many ways, what we have perceived to be normal was never actually right. The time is now to rethink normal and start visualizing what a right and just life looks like for ourselves and for our children. Because District 15 is a district like no other, we're in the unique position to mobilize during a crisis and help each other. For years now, we've been learning about each of our school communities and what they are capable of. With so many involved and engaged parent leaders, incredibly talented teachers and school staff, and courageous principals and administrators who guide student learning and lead our schools, I'm confident that we will all get through this period of time and come out stronger than ever. But the sustainability of a right and just life only can come from within each one of us. Our desire for change is made through our personal choices, and that is what will shape the future of society. It's in your hands. When we talk about the future, it often feels like a long time off, almost unattainable. I would ask you to redefine how you use the word future. Your future is only an instant away. It's in your next decision. It's changed in the moment after you read an inspiring message. It's in the way you interact with others. You are changing the future every moment of your life. As we all walk this path together, let's do it with kindness and love and with forgiveness and understanding for one another. I'm regularly impressed with so many of our school community members who go above and beyond to care for our students in the best way possible. Our superintendent, Anita Skop, is an inspiration to us all, and we are so lucky to have a leader with such a capacity for love and who really understands deeply what children need for a whole and fulfilling life. I look forward to working with each and every one of you to do what we can to support our students and our school community members across the district. We're walking this path to equity together. Thank you for being here today, and I hope you'll make every effort to join us for the rest of this DEI series. Please do remember to tell your friends and share what you learned here today. Your conversations truly will open doors. At this time, I would like to welcome Sadie Campo-Amor, the Department of Education's Director of External Affairs.
Hey.
I'm sorry, Sadie. I just lost my voice for a moment. CEC 15 has been working with Sadie for a number of years and throughout the start of the D15 diversity plan. She's attended and presented at many of our CEC 15 meetings to talk about how policy can shape equity in our schools. Sadie works directly with the Chancellor's office and works with parent leaders to share and collect feedback. She's particularly proud of the hundreds of community conversations she's facilitated to advance school diversity and integration efforts across the city. Today, Sadie will talk to us about the DOE initiatives that are supporting our schools, communities, and student learning. Thank you for being here, Sadie.
Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everybody. Good to be in community with you. I'm an old school gal, and so this has been really hard to not be in rooms with you all, but I appreciate still being invited into Zooms with you all. I want to shout out, of course, Superintendent Anita Skop, with whom we both were able to transform and evolve together as a result of the district diversity planning process. And of course, Camille and all of the CEC members and all the parent leaders who were brave enough to participate in community conversations and a part of a process that had never been done before. So with that, my name is Sadie Campo-Amor. I support community affairs for the Department of Education. And it's been wild since March, as you can imagine, kind of relentless. But some of my proudest work and the work that keeps me grounded and really standing in my purpose is, of course, an effort to fulfill the promise of Brown versus Board and really integrating our schools. And so I'm going to just sort of back up for a moment and say that we are working on school diversity and integration on multiple different fronts still to this day. At the school level, where you find diversity and admissions pilots, where a principal might say we want to maintain diversity or we want to make sure that demographic diversity is a centerpiece to our school. And so that individual principals and schools have been able to come forth with enrollment and admissions ideas or changes to make sure that their school is thriving, because we know that diverse learning environments create not only the most equitable outcomes, but really the most excellent outcomes. On the district level, there are a few different districts across the city that have diversity plans. I put them in quotes because I think all of us enter this conversation very differently. And I think it's important to acknowledge that neighborhoods have different neighborhood solutions, but that there is an important tension between meeting the community where they're at, and also pushing forward to actually naming and saying, you know, what is a segregationist policy, and what segregationist policy is a racist policy, and how are we more upfront and sort of looking at that more critically than ever and saying it's in service, especially as a Department of Education bureaucrat and official, to be very explicit and unapologetic and saying my role is to look at, to expose, to be in partnership with community members, but then to dismantle racist policies. And that's not new, but I would say that the boldness with which I speak really is a reflection of the chancellor's leadership. When he came in, he really heard the cry, mostly from students, that they were in a segregated system, but also from the tale of two pandemics that we're all living through right now, the collective grief that we're losing souls, nearly 190,000 across the nation, disproportionately impacting Black and Latino communities because of poverty and economic disparities. And then, of course, just the consistent onslaught of news that reminds us, you know, how policing is looking in this country and who it's harming and who's getting shot and who's getting killed. Those are things we as a Department of Education officials can no longer look away from. It's not in service to public education, and it's certainly not in service to the future that Camille spoke so sort of poignantly about, which is that all of these efforts in service of school diversity and integration are an opportunity to practice the future we want to see. And so I say that I'm a leader of the department on diversity and school integration efforts, but not because I know it all, not because I have the solution for your school or your community, but that I am committed to keep going, and also am totally okay with being in those community conversations, again, that Camille said, because it's really in service of practicing the future that we want to see now, and that starts right now. I'll go on to say that there's, of course, citywide efforts. The School Diversity Advisory Group that was put together by Chancellor Carranza and Mayor de Blasio was a group of over 40 community members internal to the DOE, such as superintendents, principals, teachers, and external advocates, parents, and students, who came together and put together a bulk of recommendations in 2 different reports. The first report, both of them were citywide. The first report, 64 of the 67 recommendations were accepted. And so when this group is wondering, you know, what can we do next? How can we look at the school diversity and integration? How can we go deeper? How can we make sure student voice is constantly at the table, and we're on an ongoing way reiterating and iterating on our policies? Take a look at those first set of recommendations that were largely accepted by the mayor and the chancellor, and start from there. It's a really good resource. It also laid out on a citywide lens a framework that's called the 5R framework that I hope a lot of you have heard about. But if you haven't, and if you haven't been thinking about it, that's fair too. But that's a framework that looks at integration, that explicitly challenges the premise of what the way we thought of desegregation. That is, not just moving of bodies and moving of student bodies is enough, but really looking at, again, the future that we want to see and what integration is. It needs to be in 2020 and beyond, is more holistic. That is, it is 5R, so resources, that we think about resources more dynamically, more than just a school allocation memo and fair student funding, although that's very important. But also who's raising on PTAs, or, oh, your kid needs a job, like come work for my so-and-so's company, right? Looking at resources from a more expansive lens. Representation, so teacher representation, and also just who's in the building. What kind of messages did it send me that most of my teachers, as I was growing up in New York City public schools, looked a certain way, but everybody that was serving me lunch or greeting me as a school safety agent looked a different way, right? What does that send to us? What kind of deficit thinking does that, unfortunately, make me internalize? And I'm speaking for myself as a student of color who went to schools in New York City public schools from K through 12, and they were really segregated. Of course, restorative practices. So when we are in classrooms, it's not enough to just mix everybody up and it's diverse and, and that's the end of the story, but really thinking about how are we disciplining our students, right? And who's getting disciplined at higher rates. And I know this district has done a lot of explicit work around that, of course, in partnership with the Office of Equity and Access. Race and enrollment, which speaks to the student demographics, who exactly is in the classroom, and then last, real relationships. And I can't stress real relationships because, again, it's not about just sort of shaking up the jar, mixing it up, hoping for the best, but really cultivating it. And so I've really been in service recently of thinking about two things. One, what does inch wide, mile deep work look like? As opposed to sort of saying, let's just change the system. Like if I can't have honest conversations with Superintendent Scott or with Camille, and we can't actually develop that humanity between the two of us on the phone call or in person, then how can we expect it for a system? And so everybody that's listening today, there's ways we can practice the future right now, which is in service of fulfilling the promise of Brown v. Board, which sometimes feels really, really hard to interpret and sort of say, like, how are we going to do this, right? Start with two people. Start with your kitchen table. Ask yourself, what do my anti-racist practices look like? This is a muscle, y'all. And anti-racism isn't a constant state. It's not a fixed state. So my work has really been, talking to my family, and that's been really, really hard for me. It's actually kind of my Achilles heel. I have a multiracial family, and I'm a woman of color and an Indigenous woman, no less. And it's been really hard to find my voice at those tables, but really easy for me to find them in public forums in front of hundreds of people. And so everybody's got their story. Everyone's got their transformative moment and their arc of learning. And I encourage us all to just be honest and be in community with one another and support one another as we go through this. The other report that the School Diversity Advisory Group put out was about middle school screens, was some commentary on high school screens, was about gifted and talented and rethinking school-wide enrichment. Those recommendations are still under review. We've heard the Chancellor speak a number of times about middle school screens, but I think the nuanced conversation across the city continues to needs to continue to be had and poignantly. Right, again, asking ourselves unapologetically, how are we showing up to dismantle racist policies? And that is, if we are seeing that screens at times have separated students, as we noticed or tracked in District 15 as a result of the district diversity planning process, then if we're saying that segregation, then segregation is a tool for racism, and really looking at ourselves clearly and asking ourselves these really intense questions as bureaucrats. Hasn't been easy, but it's been necessary, and that's sort of why I'm showing up to you today in my own authenticity, as that these are the tensions that I'm struggling with. As a result of COVID, not only are we all in collective grief and just sort of trying to figure out this dimension, which of course I can't go without saying that we've lost a lot of souls in our community members, but also, we don't have those state tests. We don't have those attendance grades. We don't have those behavior grades. We don't have those things that were upholding a lot of that screen system already across the city. And so we've had to force the conversation again. And a lot of really interesting dynamic things have come up, and maybe an opportunity to, again, connect the dot between our sort of current state of crisis and the world we want to live in. And again, dismantling and looking critically with critical consciousness at the policies that have been in place that maybe we thought were really well-intentioned and did good for some students, but maybe not everyone. So there's some work that's happening at the state level, which is the New York State Integration Pilot Program, NYSIP, and that some districts will be going to phase 3. And so part of my work is going to be to streamline what's happening at the school level, district level, with all the districts that currently have plans. That's 1, 3, and 15. The districts that are undergoing a community planning process, that's 9, 13, 16, 28, and 31, and what was formerly known as the affinity high schools. And then we're trying to also answer the call to other districts, even in Brooklyn, who've been saying, hey, these conversations need to be had, coronavirus or not. And so we're all sort of navigating this new reality of Zoom rooms together and seeing what is the most fair and equitable engagement process, but really also not trying to use this moment as an opportunity to just wait until things get back to normal, but really continue the work. And so I don't want to go on and on. I hope that gives you an idea. My work is in essence, and to all the parents and caregivers and community members that are listening, but even to superintendents and her team, my job is to partner with you as primary stakeholders in educational transformation. And the Chancellor believes in that work. Doesn't mean that it's easy. His team believes in that work. It doesn't mean that it always happens in a perfect way. But that's the world that I live in, and that's what I'm in service of. I'm a proud public school mom. And I'm a proud public school graduate. So my work is my beating heart is my work, and my work is my beating heart. So I just want to thank you for the time. I don't know if you want to do any questions or anything, but I will always make myself available to you. I'll give you all my cell phone number and my passwords, whatever you need to continue the conversation. You have a comrade and a public servant in me. Thank you. And Black Lives Matter.
Thank you so much, Sadie. That was really an incredible history and current of your work, and we appreciate so much everything that you've been doing towards this goal. I think we're going to not do questions right now because we have a lot of information to share, and we know that you are completely accessible and really, really appreciate everything that you've done and are doing for the future of our children.
I
Thank you
appreciate
so
you all. I'm going to just put my email in the chat, but thanks again, everybody.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. Okay, so as a part of the D15 Middle School Diversity Plan, the creation of a full-time position was formed to facilitate access to information on the middle school admissions process and middle school offerings. Our D15 Diversity Coordinator, Gina Keller, is with us today. Her responsibilities include overseeing the equitable and culturally responsive distribution of information, coordinating partnerships between elementary and middle schools, and connecting D15 families to language services. Thank you, Gina, for being with us today. I'll hand the floor over to you.
Hi, thank you so much, Camille. Good to see you again. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to join you. I thought this was a fantastic series to be a part of. My name is Gina Keller, just like Sadie. I am a product of the New York City public school system, particularly here in Brooklyn. I'm also a proud former D15 parent. My son's now in high school in the city. So, you know, this is clearly very near and dear to my heart. When this position became available, I was thrilled to be offered it. Having been a former D15 parent, some of the things that we've been doing with in our district, we have an equity congress, and for the last year it was under the well, we were working in partnership with Cornelius and Kaz Minor. I'm sure some of you are aware of who they are. And we have a youth equity congress. My colleague Maggie Desir Hart, who I know is here, we just put together the new dates for the Equity Congress, so we can definitely share those with you at a later date, just so you all know. And if you would like to pop in at some point and talk about exactly what the Equity Congress does. During this pandemic, one of the things we were doing with Superintendent Anita Scott was we put together these town halls called Soup with the Soup. And we talked about various things going on in the district, but one thing that we wanted to be clear about with everything that was going on, we didn't want to gloss over the protests. You know, this was extremely important. And so some of our guest speakers during that time was Paul Forbes, who is the Executive Director of Educational Equity for the DOE, as well as we had Thomas Keller, who's a 40-year NYPD career detective, and they spoke about their experiences being Black men living in New York City, and it was very powerful. You know, one of the things we want to make sure is that the community knows that we're aware, we understand, we know what's going on. We also had Takima Bunch, who's the Executive Director sent for the Center in Culture, Race, and Equity. And she spoke, you know, eloquently about what's going on and how our children are being affected. And, you know, so we're bringing this awareness to the community on a district level. Some of the things that we are looking forward to doing this year, I know Ms. Scott would like to have a poetry slam. So we've been talking about just ways of how to make that happen with each grade level. So I think that's fun, but bringing awareness to, you know, it's not just about Black History Month, it's all year long, and there are different things we can do to bring awareness. So that's, Maggie, do you want to jump in and add anything? Did I miss anything?
Nope. You did fine. Good job.
So that's it. I'm here. working with Camille on this. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free. And thank you, Camille.
Thank you so much. I'm also just going to drop the link to the D15 Middle School Diversity Plan in the chat. If people haven't seen it and want to spend some time sifting through it and reading. Thank you.
Actually,
Gina.
can I add something? I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, Camille. I just wanted to say, just to clarify, the Diversity Committee, which is now known as the Equity Congress and the Youth Equity Congress, which is our youth counterpart for our school-age children, actually pre-existed. It was there before the diversity plan. It's just kind of just a nod to Superintendent Scott, who realized that with our really, really far, wide range of constituents in District 15 and the varying needs, it was something that we had to actually address in terms of the diversity or lack thereof within our schools before we even had the diversity plan. So I just wanted to point that out. And so we're constantly working towards all types of things regarding inclusion and equity and you know, fair treatment in District 15. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie.
Thank you so much, Maggie. And many of our schools have the SLT working around equity, and then others have PTA committees that have been working for years around equity. I just want to invite anybody who's on the call that if you have work that you would like to talk about that your school's done, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll try to get you onto an upcoming agenda. So thank you again, Gina, for sharing this information. Next on our agenda, we're going to have Anne McGroarty from the Office of District Planning. So District 15 has been discussing the equitable rezoning of 7 of our elementary schools in the northern part of our district for the last year. We're looking at this rezoning through an equity lens. Thanks to funding through the New York State grant that supports desegregation, Superintendent Scott was able to engage a participatory action research team to work with our school communities in sharing information about this potential rezoning. I see a couple of the PAR team are on this call, so I thank you so much for joining. Anne, why don't you take it away with your overview? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. First, once again, my name is Anne. I just want to let my colleague Max introduce himself real quick.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having us today. My name is Max Famillion. I work in the Office of District Planning with Anne. Some of you may have met me or heard me present at some of our previous presentations, but I just wanted to introduce myself and may chime in, may not. So just want to say hi.
Thanks, Max. First of all, I just want to thank everyone. I want to thank Sadie and Gina and Maggie for their updates and what they're working on. Personally, as a District 15 parent who just went through the middle school process, I feel very proud to be part of that. And I actually, in full disclosure, didn't really know a whole lot that was going on a couple of years prior when this was in development, but I was super supportive of it. And I'm really excited that I got to be part of the process. And I'm excited that my daughter is going to be starting 6th grade, Wednesday, I believe. So thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here. First, I'm going to put in the PAR website. So the PAR team does have a website, and I just want to put that in for people's reference. And I wanted to shout out, just as Camille did, all the people from the PAR project who are on the call, Vanessa, Natasha, and Maddie, who's the fearless leader. So thank you so much. So to talk about how we got to here and a little bit about what the PAR team has been working on, just a little background and context for those who don't know, there is a new annex that is opening in PS 32 this year. And we knew that obviously many months ago. So the DOE has been partnering with the CEC and school communities since the spring of 2019 in order to develop a collaborative rezoning and admissions plan that takes not only into account the new addition, but also to looking towards increasing diversity integration across the subzone, also reducing overcrowding and looking at ways to advance equity in the Gowanus, Red Hook, Carroll Gardens, Cobble Hill neighborhoods. So as a reminder, the district, the schools that are going to be impacted by a potential zoning are PS 676, PS 15, both of which are in Red Hook, PS 32, PS 58, PS 29, PS 38, and PS 261. So all of those schools would be impacted by a rezoning. And then the DOE did begin initial conversations in the spring of 2019. I was not part of those conversations because I hadn't joined the Department of Education at that point. But the initial engagement process really aimed to be community driven, entailing a lot of extensive outreach across the area, across that subzone. Many planning meetings were held, I know, with CEC members, with principals, with school leadership teams. I know also there were 12 public community meetings at different schools. As a result of the engagement, the DOE and the CEC heard from hundreds of District 15 community members. And one of the major pieces of feedback was the need for more time to consider potential plans and to further center the voices of communities of Red Hook, Gowanus, and communities that are traditionally marginalized and underrepresented in these conversations. So out of that research, those findings, there was a call for something called participatory action research. And for those of you that aren't familiar with participatory action research, it's a framework for creating knowledge that is rooted in the belief that those who are most impacted by an issue should be the ones that are asking the questions, designing the methods for collecting the data, as well as doing the analysis of that data. So it shouldn't be researchers coming in with pre-existing questions, but actually the community members of District 15 asking the questions and driving that research. So as a result of all of this that was happening at the time, there was a decision by the DOE not to move forward with a proposal for this coming year. This would have been the 2020-2021 school year. So we took any sort of proposals for rezonings off the table. And then the DOE committed to finding a vendor for the PAR process. In the February of 2020, we selected a vendor and started the process of a PAR project. As soon as that was happening, there was the pandemic, schools closing. We met, as the PAR team did meet for a couple of sessions right before, I believe it was like early March. And so things were on pause for a few weeks where we weren't sure what was going to happen. We weren't sure how the team was going to be able to reconvene, but to their credit, they were a super dedicated bunch of folks who kept going and were, no matter what, made it happen. So we're excited, and thank you to Anita's team for being able to provide funding for that. So the PAR team is comprised of community members, and they're all connected to schools that are going to be impacted by a potential zoning. The group is focused on centering the perspectives and experiences of historically underrepresented community members and people who are going to be impacted by the zoning. And like I said before, the PAR team is meeting weekly. They're engaged with outreach throughout the week. They are on food distribution lines. They're at open streets. They are asking questions, interviewing folks all over District 15. And to date, they have created a website. They've built knowledge around all of the schools and learned more about the rezoning process. They've also learned more about how schools are funded. They're becoming experts themselves. They've also had opportunities to meet with other CEC presidents, hear about how other districts are approaching equity and integration efforts. They've also met with other DOE officials to learn more about all of those different things. Some PAR team members were able to attend a CEC meeting in the early part of the summer to share their updates. Like I said, they were spending time at open streets, finding more, getting more, building knowledge of the local experiences and perspectives of people. I think over 40 one-on-one interviews have been already, conducted. And out of those interviews, the PAR team collaboratively created a survey to survey wider community members and to find out what families feel about school equity as it relates to the rezoning, and to get really a deeper picture of what people are thinking about. So historically, the DOE has really not conducted really robust community conversations, and that's why this is a brand new process for us, and we're really excited about it. It's really an effort to bring equity to these rezoning conversations because that's what was being heard earlier in the process. This process is really seeking to understand the community's priorities and desires around equity, because there were assumptions about what equity looked like, as Sadie was kind of saying before, in integration, and then those assumptions that the DOE had were underlying what the rezoning proposals were like. And so this process is going to give us more information about what people are really thinking about and really want to see happen. I just want to give a plug to the CEC. The September 29th meeting is where we're hoping the PAR team can really, you guys get a chance to interact with them and learn more about what they're actually doing. Like I said, I put the website in the chat. And in terms of really looking at a potential proposal for the fall and winter vote, we are still thinking about that, but we also want to acknowledge that this is an unprecedented time and that COVID is, putting a wrench, is to say the least, and thinking about like our people, we want to hear what people are thinking about in terms of rezoning. And if we're going to work collaboratively with the PAR team, with the CC and communities to see how the climate for a rezoning vote. But regardless, the research and the recommendations and findings from the PAR team can live beyond this rezoning and beyond this moment. And hopefully those wider recommendations we can kind of take advantage of and keep in our minds as an organization. So I know that was a lot, and I'm sorry to overwhelm you with information, but like I said, the PAR team website, I can give you my email and Max's email. We're always available. You can reach out anytime to ask us questions. We're here for everybody in the district in terms of rezoning. So
thank you so much. Max, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think I just want to add one quick thing, just to clarify. I think, when we originally committed to the PAR process and began that work, there was a pretty distinct goal of a vote for implementation for the 2021-2022 school year. Obviously, that was before COVID, and Anne shared some of the details of how that impacted the process. And I think we're starting to get questions from the community. Now I want to be clear that a potential vote for this fall and winter is certainly still on the table. And as Ann mentioned, we and the PAR team will be coming out to this meeting on the 29th to discuss some of that further. But any decision to move forward with a vote, a proposal and a subsequent vote for 21-22 implementation will be made collaboratively with CC, community, superintendent, PAR team, all stakeholders involved. This is a truly unprecedented time, and again, I have to reiterate what Ann said. Big kudos to the PAR team and to the support of Superintendent Scott, kind of moving the work forward during this really challenging time. So we look forward to continuing to have those conversations over the coming weeks and months, and see where we end up landing.
Great, thank you so much. So thank you, Anne, thank you, Max, and thank you to everybody on the PAR team for all of the work you're doing to engage our school communities and for sharing information to help grow our communities. We'll look forward to hearing from the PAR team on hopefully September 29th, and if not, sooner than later. Thank you so much. So our next speaker is Lisa Pulaski. I'm sorry. We're thrilled to have Lisa here today with us. She's the Director of Family Empowerment and works with Executive Superintendent Watts in the Brooklyn North office. Lisa will be giving an update on training opportunities for school staff and families. Again, if anyone on the call wants to share the name of a vendor that you may have worked with and found successful, please feel free to drop that information in the chat. CEC 15 is working on engaging a number of vendors to assist us with this work. So Thank you, Lisa. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lisa Pulaski, and I have just recently joined the Brooklyn North team as the Director of Family Empowerment. It's a really exciting time to get to work with families and communities because we are all in uncharted territory. One of the drivers in Brooklyn North is about engaging our families and engaging our communities in partnership. So Executive Superintendent Watts really elevated that driver, and I was really thrilled to come and join the team. I thank you, Camille, and CEC 15, and Superintendent Scott, and my colleagues, just for even inviting me into this space that you've created for community members to really think deeply about diversity, equity, anti-racism, and also to act. So like Camille said earlier, our conversation will open doors, and then there are next steps as well. It's really great for me to be back in District 15. So 12 years ago, I got to know District 15 as an achievement coach, and then later as the Director of Achievement for one of the networks. And I see that the strength and the leadership and the engagement of families and communities is even stronger now. So I'm just really thrilled to be here. I wish I had a lot of updates for you at this moment. I don't, but as everyone knows, the Chancellor is committed to creating opportunities for all staff members to engage in implicit bias training. In District 15 of the roughly 3,100 staff members, at this moment in time, 1,685 of them have completed the 5-hour workshop in person or via the online platform, which is about 54% of staff thus far. So there will continue to be implicit bias training, and those dates have been shared with the districts. I'm waiting for the list, and then I can share with Camille to send out. But one thing just to keep in mind is that the implicit bias training is the baseline. It's kind of the first step for school communities to be taking. And as was mentioned earlier, many PTAs and SLTs and school communities have already engaged in other work to think about advancing equity and working toward a more anti-racist society. So it will be helpful to have the information about the implicit bias trainings, but also just to know that there are other activities to engage in. And I'm really looking forward to partnering with the CEC and the district and my colleagues who've already spoken on this call to make sure that we're providing access to you so that you know what is available, and also so that if needs arise that I can bring those back to our partners in the Office of Equity and Access and FACE. I did connect with the Office of Equity and Access, and they're in the process of planning with FACE for some family-facing resources and supports. I am awaiting some more detail about that, but as soon as that arrives, I'll be able to share that with you because they also, both of those offices, obviously recognize the importance of making sure that this isn't just directed at school staff, but that families, parents are engaging and interested in participating in training and accessing resources. And I'm just really looking forward to being a resource to you and a partner and working together. So I thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I did drop in the chat the link to the DOE Office of Equity and Access, and I'm also going to drop in the chat some reading material on the DOE website on equity literacy that is really quite interesting and useful in terms of planning events at your school communities or just advancing your personal growth, and definitely things to talk about with your family there. So thank you so much. So as we come to a close of this session, I want to thank all of our guest speakers and thank our audience for attending today. As a reminder, District 15 will be hosting the Chancellor this Wednesday night, September 16th, at our virtual D15 Town Hall. feel free to send your questions or comments about advancing equity in our schools to the Chancellor's office when you sign up for the town hall. I'm going to drop that in the chat as well, the link to sign up and the link to submit questions to the Chancellor. And of course, this can be on any issue whatsoever. I am hoping to see you all again at our next DEI session, which is going to be on Monday, September 21st at 1 p.m. We'll be learning about early childhood, social emotional learning, and inclusive classrooms. And I am just looking in the chat that Lydia wrote, it would be great to see the culturally responsive curriculum mentioned earlier and have parent training on understanding curriculum ahead of a largely remote school year. I completely agree 100%. And we will certainly discuss this with Superintendent Scott. And we'll be hearing more about culturally responsive curriculum in upcoming sessions. So thank you, everybody. Take care. Have a fantastic week and make good choices. Have a wonderful day.